Good evening, my name is Eric Latif. Immediate former education CS Professor George Magoha has died this evening at the Nairobi hospital as medics tried to resuscitate him. In a statement released to the media shortly after his demise, the Nairobi hospital said the former CS collapsed at his house but succumbed upon arrival at the hospital. Our reporter George Moringa joins us now with an update from the Lee Funeral Home. George, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Larry. It was a very pleasant evening, of course, for the family of the late Professor George Magoha, the former CS for Cabinet Secretary for Education, who passed away today. And he is currently at Lee Funeral Home, where earlier on we did see family members stream in to go through the process and, of course, to view the body and to be able to pass their final goodbyes to the late CS, who collapsed 4 times, according to his friend, Professor Mwenda, who said earlier on that the wife, that is Dr. Barbara Magoha, called him while he was at his practice at the Kenyatta National Hospital and told him that the professor needed to see him. It was a distress call, he said, and the doctor rushed to the family home, and the professor, where the wife, Dr. Barbara, also asked him whether along the way whether he had blood pressure acute, and he said that he was not too far from the home, and then he was able to go in, and the professor told him, he appreciated his arrival. That was between 3 to 5 p.m. And after the professor, collapsed a second time, they called for an ambulance and they started their journey to Nairobi Hospital. And the final collapse was 100 meters from the hospital accident and emergency, or rather the emergency section here at the Nairobi Hospital, which is just adjacent to the Lee Funeral Home. That was where the professor passed away. According to what they were told, it was due to cardiac arrest here at the Nairobi Hospital, and his body was moved to Lee Funeral Home. Professor lived a full life, and it appears he had a premonition on his death, according to the friends who were able to be here. That is Professor Mwanda, who said it appears
during the evening, we've been able to see family members, of course, who have been able to come here. We've seen elected leaders led by the President, Dr. William Ruto, who eulogized the late professor, former CS for Education, Professor George Magoha. We also saw the CS, other CSS and other leaders be able to eulogize the late George Magoha, Professor George Magoha. And we've also seen Raila Odinga, among other leaders, who were able to eulogized the late CS for Education, terming him as a man who was forthright and who did his work with dedication. We also have seen, other leaders, former CS, Osiani, who was able to make his way here. And of course, our family members and other leaders have been able to view the body of the late Professor George Magoha and pay their last respect here at Lee Funeral Home, where he was brought in following his death at the Nairobi Hospital in what has been termed as cardiac arrest by the doctors, or rather by the family members who were able to be here, and through the Professor Mwanda, who spoke to us upon us, leading the family. He says he's a friend and he was mentored by the late Professor George Magoha. Earlier on, we did listen to what he had to say, and this is what he had to say regarding the the sudden death of Professor George Magoha earlier on at the Nairobi Hospital. I leave you with the narration that he gave. That is Professor Mwanda. Take a listen.
Away from Kenyatta, about 4 kilometers, she called again and asked me whether I had a blood pressure machine. I told her I would get one. I rushed back to my clinic, got a blood pressure machine. As I was about 4 kilometers to the home, she SMS and asked me whether I could get an ambulance. And I was too close to home, their home. There was a traffic jam. They drove right to the home. At the gate, I met some attendants who rushed me in. I met the son at the door who rushed me straight to where he was. He was seated actually. He greeted me and said, "Oh, you have come." Then I said to take the blood pressure. It was not recording. At that time, he slipped off from his sitting position. And we carried him to the car. He went into a car. The wife and my driver, we followed. They were ahead of us about 200 meters. They reached about 10 minutes earlier than us. From the information, he had what we call a collapse. He was resuscitated back by the son, who is a medical doctor. And then 100 meters to the casualty of the Nairobi hospital, he collapsed again, was rushed to casualty. There was resuscitation, which took quite a bit of time, but they were not able to revive him. That was a short message. What I know is that I must say he was waiting for me, because he had told me some things about his life in these final days. And that has been fulfilled. And I shall continue doing so.
Maybe how would you eulogize? A lot of Kenyans are sending tributes, including Don's former VCs. They're eulogizing the late professor as a hero in this nation.
In all aspects, he was second to none in whatever duty and responsibility he undertook. He did his work diligently. He dedicated himself. He gave himself to whatever responsibility he was given. And as I said, we are pure mentoring. And people tend to think we do things the same way, although I'm not a public figure. But in private, we were the same in many ways, in many decisions. He never took a second position in anything. He would take a first position in whatever way. And there was no opposite of the right, the correct, the ideal. As a human being, of course, he had his other side. But that is interpretative. The only thing I can say, he was second to none in whatever responsibility he took and he was given.
Now, Professor George Magoha served the education sector in many capacities over the years as a lecturer.